So, this was in 2015. I was going on this road trip with some friends, driving down to this forest that was like 3 hours away. We discussed exploring this old, unused fire lookout, and I was really into it. I should probably note that camping there was technically off because it wasn't maintained anymore and wasn't super safe. However, I had done research online and most people told me it was okay to go see. The latest update I could find concerning it was 3 years prior, so I had zero idea what I was actually gonna see when we arrived. I discovered this shallow ditch off the road where I could pull the car over, took my backpack with 2 days' contents, and began climbing. There rarely were mapped trails on trips like this, so I went by my handheld satellite GPS, relying on it to keep me going in the general direction. More often than not, I was merely attempting to make my way through these new woods. The climb down took 4 or 5 hours. The higher it went, the denser and rockier it became. I was truly hoping the fire lookout was still standing and good enough that I could crash for the night. If it wasn't, I had to find another location nearby where I could set up my tent and get some rest. After several arduous hours pushing through dense woods, I made it. The building was set just above the tree line, and when I went close, it looked like it held up pretty well. The paint was scratched off naturally, but it appeared to be standing up all right. I shoved some of the support beams with all my strength, and they looked firm, so I decided to give it a try climbing up the ladder. It was made of metal and looked sturdy, but it groaned with every shift. When I climbed over the top, I froze, captivated by the sight. I could see the entire forest stretching off into infinity. No buildings, roads, signs of humanity for miles. Just forest. After it all, I walked along the ledge and into the lookout. It was tiny, not one of those big ones people make into Airbnbs or whatnot. It was one room, approximately 150 square feet. There was a rotting bed in one corner and a rotting wooden desk in the other. There were rotting window frames along each side. There wasn't much else happening. I set down my pack, unrolled my mattress and sleep bag, and cooked a meal over the small camp stove. When the sun started setting, I walked back outside onto the ledge to watch. It was hands down one of the prettiest scenes I'd ever had. It looked like it went far, far, far too quickly. And when I could barely process it all, it was nighttime. There were clouds in the sky, so no stars or moonlight, just outright darkness. With nothing going on, I literally just relaxed, sitting on the ledge. Perhaps an hour went by when I noticed something down below, light traveling through trees. The strange thing was it didn't seem like the regular man-made light. It had this flicker orange feel, like a campfire, like a torch, honestly. It was traveling around the woods, near where I was. The odds of somebody else actually being this far out in this place this hour like me were super small. There wasn't even a path down this far. Also, it was odd this person was using a torch at nighttime when they could have merely used a flashlight. I sat there for a minute, just looking at the light bounce around the trees until it went behind something. It didn't appear again for the remainder of the half hour. I relaxed against the ledge, enjoying the quiet of the evening. The wind then began blowing, and it became quite cold, so I stood up to take one final peek before going inside. But when I looked down from the lookout, I could see someone down there. They were just standing in the grass between the building and the woods. It honestly felt like they were looking directly at me. Perhaps it was that individual with the flashlight again. "Hey, is anyone there?" I shouted down, stuck somewhat on what to do. They didn't say anything or budge at all. We just stood looking at each other for about 10 or 15 seconds before they slowly raised an arm, perhaps as some sort of welcome or apology. The man then just turned around and walked off into the woods without even flipping a light on. Truthfully, it was really spooking me, but I reassured myself it was likely just another hiker making sure the lookout point wasn't occupied. Perhaps they weren't sure if somebody actually was. I don't really understand why he just raised his hand and didn't say anything. I waited outside for a few minutes longer, but when nothing else moved, I went back inside and snuck into my sleeping bag to get warm. Falling asleep wasn't easy. The window was blowing, and the creaky floor made me alert. But hey, sooner or later, I dozed off. It's hard to say how long I was asleep when I woke again. The wind had died down, but it was still black as coal. I blinked, sort of dazed about why I woke during the wee hours. And then I heard it, a noise I knew intimately, the soft creak of metal from the ladder outside. I sat up, thinking I had dreamed it. But then I heard it again. Someone was climbing the ladder. I didn't know if they were coming down or going up. I just heard those hinges at the top groan with every step. It was completely black outside the window. I buckle earned me bag, slung me pack, terrified out of my wits, and strapped onto the ledge. It took roughly 20 seconds, and while that happened, the creaking increased speed and intensity, like someone was hurrying up. And then it completely ceased, right when I was going to get onto the ledge. I just froze, straining to hear if I could hear anything else. Inch by inch, I snuck around the walkway and looked around the edge over the corner toward the ladder. Nothing. I inched closer, fast-beating heart, and looked down over the edge. There wasn't anyone on the ladder. I just stood there, completely dumbfounded, freaked, and bewildered. Then I heard some fast footsteps on the wooden boards behind me. I spun around and just barely saw an outline of a shadowy figure whizzing past the windows over by the lookout. Without conscious thought, I leapt onto the ladder and took off down. Man, it was like this whole terror having to climb down this slippery metallic ladder with my heart pounding, knowing someone was literally above me. Halfway down, I looked up, and this man's head was just coming over the edge from upstairs. I didn't blink once. I hit the ground and took off into the woods. In hindsight, I honestly do not even know why I took my backpack, but it ended up being a smart thing to do. Could have even saved my life. Using my flashlight and GPS, I worked myself out, finally getting back down to my car. As far as I could tell, nobody was after me. I just took off down the road and never even looked in the rearview mirror.
Story 2.
I was camping beside this small lake for the weekend, really. This wasn't supposed to. It's not ridiculous, it's just a few days off. Relax by the river beside the forest. Nothing else. So, literally, it was the first day, you see? They basically just pitched camp and relaxed for the everything. The whole day and night just felt kinda strange. Out in the country, it was real thin. Footpath leading to it. But it wasn't. It's not on the internet or anything. So only people born here would truly understand. My father used to bring me here when I was a bro. Each time I went out to that, I recall visiting the place with my father when I was young. I have always been alone. Never had anyone. Truthfully, no one's ever been here before. Have you received any advice that others had? Thus, I was present on the 20th. I simply walked along the river. I'm just like relaxing here, you see. I must have circled the lake 3 or 4. There were times that we were walking. Everything was relaxed and informal. But then, So one afternoon while I was walking by the lake, I located some printed materials in the well. There is soil right at the tree's edge. I had been pacing the block in circles. I never experienced those before. Like, where? They all were like, it's completely obvious, right? I truly wouldn't have missed them. They also looked super fresh. It was really weird that it appears that another person has visited here, but like completely literal tracks. So you see, no shoes, no footprints, okay? The swimming pool that I visited didn't even have, there's like easy access to the lake, so it's not. And they completely removed their shoes initially. I'm gonna hit the pool, and I'd completely join you. I spotted them at the man. This lake completely spooked me. I don't know why, but completely forgot about them. While I was roaming around nearby, they're watching me and did not want me to. It was difficult not to become paranoid when I spotted them. About it, from what I was able to see, it appeared as if the footprints ascended up to the trees, lean over the lake pretty far, then right back into the woods where I probably went in the back for like a sec. I didn't feel like going in with them. Completely went into the wild forest. I only just made it home. I continued to look at the lake while camping, or perhaps the clump of trees near the lake, just making sure that somebody's here, but I'm not. Saw hi? Did you people see the sunset? Paranoia began seeping back in once more. Saw, hi, did you people see the sunset? Paranoia began seeping back in once more. Something about those footprints just didn't feel shutting down and realizing they likely still present. It wasn't exactly reassuring. Feeling when it got darker, I fueled up. I've got a campfire burning with plenty of firewood. I merely procrastinated there, doing what I could to assist me in getting over it, but it was a rather hard segment of me felt entirely justified in being uneasy, and another small voice in me told me I was overreacting, just saying it out loud. But I'm not getting into the I heard some footsteps approaching last night. I immediately turned and observed the trees. They were approaching in the darkness over there. It was after 1, but truly, it took 2. And like, people are just approaching me. I glanced over at them hastily, until they burst onto the scene. So, one boy was with one girl, standing opposite each other, hanging out together and just chilling at the edge of where the light of the fire I could not actually see their faces. Or, if I'm honest, anything beyond the fundamentals. There's no way I could go as old as they're young. So, where do you require assistance? That's what I told her. So the woman turned and ran back quickly into the forest and just disappearing. But the man just held his ground, you see? Wouldn't move or even look back at the... So, that's when I had a look. Down, he noticed he was completely barefoot. Man, these shoes were absolutely great. We were out by the lake, and I again inquired if I could have assisted him, but he too turned around. Walked back in silently to I was essentially fighting my own demons. Freak out afterward. That was the best unsettling and strange encounter I'd ever had, almost not even feeling real. I didn't want to be trapped in those woods for immediately. I simply dived in to pack my things up. I'm not that type of a friend to chill with when things get. Fortunately, my installation was extremely easy too. I posted it all and removed it all, you see? All set is in my backpack, and I'm ready to go. Within a couple of minutes, I was completely lost. They went out, but I just didn't feel like sitting around. So, when they came around again, I just sent everybody packing. The pieces that could not sparkle, so I completely burned out immediately after leaving. Then the stroll was a dash towards the forest. Almost 2 hours just for the opening 10 minutes. I was really nervous. Not quite sure if I'm being followed, but the further I get, I obtain the better. I estimated it at around 40 minutes and the entire woods were absolutely quiet. No noise whatsoever. Any crickets or things when I just suddenly heard running footsteps nearby. It's likely about 100 feet shorter than me, and it was completely somebody I just couldn't. I didn't take anything, so I continued for another few minutes, and I heard it again, this time on the other right beside me. The steps were extremely quiet, more than they ought to have, which resulted in they were actually driving, heavily driving, barefoot, and they were very much the same. I'd seen at the lake if they'd been. Whose shadow is this far into the trees? They completely didn't get what they desired. For a while, I'd keep hearing this running sound. Footsteps in the distance, just short, fizzy, like they tiptoed around quietly me and then suddenly sprinting away. I have no idea what that would be. Walking was far spookier than anything else. I sort of navigated through the woods, okay? It back to my truck. I was able to make. It's out of G's. I really need something more to say, or that I discovered the identity of that fellow and lady, or what they had been doing. But I have. Perhaps I'm completely wrong, but sometimes I didn't know whether they were dead or what, you see? I'm not really sure, and I'm not entirely sure I do. Never went back. Story 3. I'm a 24-year-old woman from northern Arizona. This occurred several years ago when I resided in a small camper van traveling the West Coast. People lead all kinds of lives in these vans or RVs. I always steered clear of big cities, camping in tiny towns along the way, but I mainly adored camping in the backcountry. Deeper into the woods, away from other people, was where I was always most comfortable, completely enjoying the traveling lifestyle. I think part of it was it always made me feel safer alone in the woods than sneaking around in an anonymous parking lot in an enormous metropolis. In that week, I was taking it easy driving between two large cities in Washington, going slowly on secondary roads, and spending multiple days at campsites. That afternoon, I turned off the street onto a narrow dirt road into the woods. There were some little pull-offs, all unoccupied, and it looked like it had been ages since anyone had been there, so I continued, hoping to find a larger, scenery-filled spot. There was a large clearing at the far end where I could park. It wasn't pretty, just surrounded by trees, but it was big, private, and peaceful, with stone surrounds around what looked like an old-fashioned stone fire pit in the middle. I parked, leveled, and set about getting settled. It was mid-spring. It rained almost daily in Washington, so not much could be done outside. I cracked open the van's side door halfways for ventilation while I prepared dinner with laptop's help. It was getting close to evening, so I had a couple hours before I went to sleep. In the half hour it took, the sun set down past trees, and rain increased. I closed door as it was allowing the water in, but instead cracked open small window around rear van. I was sitting on the bed, watching television with laptop, but half into it, light hit the screen coming in window behind me. It was light reflecting onto laptop's screen. By the time I could get off it, it went off. Not disappearing, but going off, like someone turned it off. When I turned around, looked through window, I could see nothing. It was black and still coming down rain outside. I had no sense how far away the light had traveled, what it even was. Since the trail had other pull-off spots, I thought perhaps it was another camper. Perhaps their headlights somehow coming around trees into my window, right before they turned off their rig. The issue was, The light wasn't coming around the road that I had driven down. Behind my window were nothing but trees. Perhaps there was another trail I never heard about. I could check little either way anyway. So I went back to watching laptop. Now and then, I'd get up, take peek outside the windows, but with the rain thudding aluminum roof, it was hard to say whether I was hearing anything. Every time I looked out, I could see nothing to indicate anyone was about, so I didn't let it get me down all that much. It was about 10 or 11 o'clock, I imagine, when I thought I had better get settled down for the night and see if I could get some sleep. I snuffed absolutely every light in the van, closed every window, and pulled down the shade. It was virtually completely black in the interior. I crept under the covers and tried to get some sleep. I almost never had a problem, but this evening I just could not get comfortable. The rain, unfortunately, increased after an hour, and thunder came in, so loud it made it impossible to get some sleep. About 2 hours into the evening, through the driving rain and thunder, I could have sworn I heard something move outside. It was just loud enough to recognize it as real. A noise like anything rushing, breaking off a branch in the grass just outside my van. The moment I heard it, there were no other noises. It was blacker than I could see the ground just outside the window. The longer I looked, the spookier I felt, like someone was looking in. I let down the window shade and sat there, trying to talk myself into overcaudios. But 90 seconds later, I heard a voice, a man's voice, in an uproarious whisper like he was talking with somebody else. I froze, afraid to pull the covers up and look over the windows again, knowing they'd probably see me if they didn't already. They probably knew there was someone in the van either, making it all the more terrifying. For about 2 or 3 minutes, I heard nothing except the rain and thunderstorms. Suddenly, there was noise at the sliding side door, bending plastic because they were pushing it. Then they knocked. A few seconds later, another knock. Even when I was sure they knew there was somebody inside, I was far too frightened to say anything. Maybe they didn't know how many people were inside here or whether I was male or female, so I felt safer staying quiet. A nervous, eerie 5 minutes passed when knocking was done every few seconds with nobody saying anything. By this point, they must be soaked to the skin and probably could not see much in this downpour. Then, after what felt like an age, they spoke. "Sheriff's Department. Open up." I didn't believe it for one moment. If it was true, why not say it from the outset? They kept knocking and shouting various lines, all stating that they were an officer and I had to open the door. It sounded like a weak ploy to get me to open up without actually having to use violence. I slowly raised the window covering and looked outside. All I could make out was a shadowy figure moving in the area of the door, but from its shape, it didn't appear as though they had any police equipment upon it. I was confident this was going to go south. For 30 seconds, I balanced what to do while the knocking became increasingly impatient. Then I decided I'd take a chance, scrambling over into the driving seat in an attempt to drive off. The moment I turned the van on, I heard 2 sets of feet making their way towards the side. I had just been getting ready to go when I heard somebody at the window beside me. The van luckily didn't get stuck. I began down the trail. I didn't see another car on the road, making those strange people even strange though. I called the county, but an officer explained that nobody was working that evening, and I never received an answer. It could have become a big mess, but I'm happy it's been easy going ever since.